So I had given you guys some questions to ask about what you know about STEM, and pretty much like you guys have a good foundation for it, but I think the biggest misconception with STEM is that it's only science, technology, engineering, and math. And really, the focus that we want to look at is that it's transdisciplinary, so that you can incorporate social studies and ELA and all of that. And it's something that's highly engaging with students because it really gets them up and moving and building something and thinking and using their creativity. But the biggest question for us is how can we use this because we're departmentalized? Because we have, half of us are teaching just ELA and social studies, and the other half is teaching math and science. So one of the things when Murphy had texted us about the Women in Science posters, how they had a new set come up, and then KV were like, oh, we could put it in our pod as like something for the kids to look at. And I thought, okay, well then how can we take that, since that's something we were all really kind of interested in, and how can we, instead of just putting posters up, kind of have the students so that when they see the poster, they feel some sort of connection to it because they've done something with it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take one of the posters and we're gonna work together and how can we figure out how to kind of blend all of our areas into some activities or like little mini lessons that center around these posters so that we can use throughout the year. So one of the things that I found really helpful is this unit overview for STEM, because it has you take a look at what are the essential questions, what are the enduring understandings, but then the part that I like is right here, where you can kind of do some planning as to how can I incorporate these different topics into this one, or the different contents into this one topic. So one of the posters I have is Katherine Johnson, and I thought that maybe we could work together today to kind of come up with some ideas that we could do for that poster that we could put up. Since she is someone that is probably one of the more better known women than all the posters that are on there, because some of them I had never heard of. Do you know who Katherine Johnson is?
Yeah.
Who is Katherine Johnson?
She's a human computer.
She is, yeah.
They just had a movie about it.
Yeah, Hidden Figures, yep.
Hidden Figures.
Yep.
That was a
So-
good movie. Yeah, that sounds like yeah.
Yeah.
That's my
So I
favorite.
thought that that would be a good,
You got a nice
what's that? What, projector?
one. No. Yeah.
It's brand new.
And your own.
Well, because the other one died, like didn't turn on, and now it's frozen.
Oh, you took
So-
a picture.
No, you took a picture.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
How did I do that? I don't even know how I did it.
Yeah, you took a picture.
I thought I turned on the light. Oh, I didn't. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I actually have copies for you, a close point copy to look at, but I thought that I would just do the writing and you guys do some thinking together. And you don't necessarily know everything about her and the specifics of what area of math that she was strongest in, but you kind of have an idea that she worked for NASA, that she was instrumental in a lot of the flights that were taken. So taking a look at this, you know, we would have our overview, which would be Katherine Johnson is our big topic. But in talking about her, what are some ideas that you have for how could we incorporate then ELA into teaching the kids about Katherine Johnson?
Making it somewhat of a research project.
Okay.
So starting off with conducting research and
Mm-hmm.
focusing on like actually how to properly do that
Mm-hmm.
as you're going on your computer and being safe with like what you're looking for, what sources are credible, what are
Absolutely, yeah. Because they don't quite know how to distinguish yet
Right.
what's appropriate, what's not.
Right.
I had a student yesterday who I was showing her a health website, and because it had animation and because it had cartoon, she said, "Oh, that's not reliable. I don't trust anything with animation." Like, well, but it was put out by Department of Agriculture, so it
Right.
was appropriate.
That is a nice comment for her name. Because
Yes.
sometimes that would not be reliable.
Right.
Looking at the source, she
Right.
knows it is.
But it's kind of getting them to a deeper look. Okay.
There's a vocabulary, Catherine.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay.
I love vocab.
And yeah.
I did the video with her, and we did a reading with her
Mhm.
last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be
So they can
something.
use that.
like multiple sources, so finding like
Yeah.
multiple sources and bringing the evidence from those multiple sources to like create some type of, it could be like,
Maybe like a summary.
yeah, like a,
biography.
yeah, definitely a biography of the person, or even like making a video of the person
Mhm.
also,
Mhm.
something like that.
So that kind of then brings in some of the fine arts if you're asking them to then share through a video
Yeah.
or share through some sort of way to present their findings.
There could be some type of like script that they follow, like I am like Katherine Johnson or something like that, and they have to find all of the evidence behind like who she truly was, and then they
Mhm.
can present that and play it in front of the class.
Right, absolutely. Any other thoughts, like with social studies, or even if you're going into the science, the math area?
Well, our first unit is the blast off unit, so that's making
Mhm.
rockets, so somehow making the connection to Katherine Johnson and things that are doing
Yeah,
ELA.
think of that.
So cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. Because even though the building of the rocket and the launch is now optional for us now, but that might be something that we can then tie in with that.
And they could also look at what she did, what she created, and try to maybe create their own version
Mm-hmm.
using whatever materials we provided them with.
So look at her, whatever her area with math is. And really like the human computer, just even taking the computation part of it. Because as fifth graders, they sometimes mess up with being accurate with their calculations, and just kind of zoning in on how that it was so important for her to get it right.
Yeah.
Well, I think with her, John Glenn, even when they like actually had like the computers that could calculate it, he
Mhm.
still made her, after the computer calculated it,
Mhm.
calculate it by hand, because
Right.
she was so good at it that
Mhm.
he wanted her to be the one to say
Yeah.
this is right.
And how great is that, like when we're teaching math, that yeah, we have these calculators, but it's still really important for us to even double check that.
Right.
Because they want to use the calculator and think that's the easy way.
We can connect it to math standards, like attending to precision,
Yep, yep,
like how important it was for her to.
absolutely. And those math standards, and even when you tie it into some of the STEM practices, they overlap really nicely. But even that like attending to precision then goes back to what we were saying with the ELA, with the researching and making sure with credible sources and how that all kind of just flows together. And then one of the big things is the engineering design process, where you usually start with a build of some kind, of whatever it is, and then you have to go through all of the different parts of it with the brainstorming, the planning, the designing, the then building, but then testing and going back and modifying and making revisions and see what works. And so that could probably tie in with the rocket building. So we could center that around all of building around that rocket. Any social studies aspects that you can think of?
I think we should definitely place her in history, like, think about what they already know, think about how many years in the future from that she is as our,
Because you could do like
colonies,
like a
right?
a
timeline
timeline.
Yeah, and
Like
we
a
have a timeline
timeline.
in our room and place her compared to the Revolutionary War, whatever you're
Mhm.
right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or you could even do like a timeline of like NASA,
Uh-huh.
and then like where she would fit in on that timeline. Like was
Mhm.
she there when the moon landing happened? Was she there before that? Like kind of
Well,
like.
and that's a
or
good point,
even-
making it relatable, putting the moon landing on there, a lot of kids would notice,
Mm-hmm.
understand the time frame. Cause I know
Mhm.
a lot struggle understanding what is that time frame, so making things on the timeline relatable and then posting her where she
Right,
belongs.
right.
When were computers created, when did color on TV come out, or
Mhm.
when were, that was obviously a long time ago, but then they would understand that time frame.
Or like even like a timeline of the important missions she worked on.
Mhm.
Yeah, timeline
Mhm.
into it.
What year do you remember from video?
I think it was.
1940.
I think it was right in the beginning of NASA.
Yeah, I think it was like, yeah,
I don't.
So
I
placing
know.
her within like the civil
Mhm.
rights and like what.
Yeah, civil
absolutely.
rights.
Yes.
Because
they
then
would
that
know
whole civil
that,
rights is an
yeah.
issue, because here she was not only a woman, she was a black woman.
Yeah.
And it when she originally went into the department that she moved into, that where she did like all of her famous work, like they were not taking her seriously.
Like they even showed
Because I
like
think the they had like separate rooms.
They had separate bathrooms.
Because it was
too,
like
that she
separate
had to
but
walk
equal still.
like
Yeah.
literally across the entire
Yeah.
site to
Yeah.
actually go to the bathroom.
And like she would take her work with
All of
her.
her work was it would take her so long to get there and
Right,
to work there. And
right.
yeah.
I mean, that's a huge tie-in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what's great about this is something that we don't have to wait until February.
Yeah.
Like this is just, let's just look at this as a woman of science. Let's look at it as a scientist
Right.
and see, okay, here's the contributions that she gave to us because it's huge.
To
So-
endure understanding,
Mhm.
could we write multiple representations, so like not just
Absolutely.
reading about it, but showing them videos, other than just researching, because some people learn better. I wonder if we could research that ourselves, if there's a
Mhm.
video on her, like with
Mhm.
vocabulary, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a video on Safari montage.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that there's they made a kid-friendly Hidden Figures book.
They did, yeah. A young
So that's
reader's.
cool.
Because I had it in my room, but I think a kid
Mhm.
stole it.
That doesn't
All of
sound
my
right.
good books have been stolen.
That doesn't happen in schools.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, like you could even do like a novel study with that, and
Right.
then pull in the research aspect of definitely pulling in the ELA, the civil rights aspect, the timeline, the history, and how it all fills out. So I think a lot of times with taking a STEM unit, and people want to kind of compartmentalize it into just sciences and all of that, it really is pretty easy to then incorporate all these other areas. And I say that, but my big thing is it's easy when you're collaborating.
Yeah.
Because you guys have come up with so many more ideas than I was thinking of. And I think that that's something we don't get enough time to do.
Yeah.
And I thank you for taking your time today to kind of help me with this. But then how do we go about this type of project throughout our year together as we're trying to build this?
I think it's something like this, for example, we could do in one whole month. Like, we don't have to do something every week.
Right.
Right.
So, and we could easily come up with one day in a month to meet, to
Mhm.
plan like this,
Mhm.
and do it, but not have to do it, like Murphy doesn't have to do it when Haley does it, or
Right.
Kate doesn't have to do it when I
Right.
do it. Like, we don't have to do it, but get it done in that month.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it happens in science when we're doing the water cycle
Yep.
unit, and she'll be teaching, like, their homework one time was on the water cycle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't on purpose, but like we
Mhm.
can do stuff like that easily.
Or we do like readings
If we
that
do
are
it
all
monthly.
like water based.
Mhm.
So like they're getting that background knowledge and then adding it to science or vice versa. They get background knowledge from science and add it to like the journal.
I think it's a good idea
It's very
because it
thematic.
helps kids,
And they love
especially
it.
the low ones, because it makes them remember things more because they're gearing it
Right.
all
Mhm.
categories.
And they do,
so
and
your
they-
kids can
They make
thrive.
those connections.
They love it. They're like,
They
wait a
say
second,
that.
I just learned that in that class.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then they
Like,
sense
how are
that
you
we're
teaching
working
me?
together, and then they know
Exactly.
to work together.
Yeah.
I think it would be a good idea. We should definitely do it.
And I think we're also in a great situation where the posters that you found have a lot of women of color. And I think that one, we can tie into, here are some wonderful contributions of people of color that you might not know about. And then we can then tie into, here are now women of color. That we can say, look, someone that looks like you, and look at the wonderful things that they're doing. And I think that that's really important for us to really push with our kids. Because a lot of times they kind of come in with the, when am I gonna need this? Or why bother to do it? And it's, see? So I actually had some from an original set that I had up, but so we have like Rosalind Franklin. Here we have somebody who, she was instrumental in discovering DNA, but the credit was taken by the two men that she was researching for, because that was in a time period where, you know, women weren't really valued as far as in science. But like here is a young woman from, I think she's from Iran. She actually passed away, I think a year or two ago. She was young when she did this. You know, it wasn't like in her 50s, 60s established her career. So we have these, we have others that we have on that website that we can print off, and that maybe that could be something, a goal of ours this year, to then figure out, let's pick like 2, and let's try to build something throughout the year for 2 people.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah, we could do it quarterly.
And we could
Yeah.
definitely, we could like even like post like a timeline like out in the
Mhm.
hallway with both of those figures.
Absolutely,
So
and
tying
add
those
to
all
it.
together becomes
Yeah.
really good.
And if we can then do maybe whatever we get done this year, then next year we can just already have something and then add on to it.
Yeah, if we make it a goal for 2 this year, then next year we try
Mhm.
quarterly
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
after
let's
that
do that,
maybe even
I like
more.
that,
Mm-hmm.
especially because we're only doing science in the second and fourth quarter.
Right.
Although it still relates to math,
Yeah.
you can do it whenever.
And I think
Make it happen.
Yeah.
absolutely,
I mean,
yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, because there's a lot of there's one, I can't remember, Mary Britt Moser, who I think was working with the brain. So we could definitely tie into that, especially when we
That
talk
is
about
drug and
Well,
alcohol.
Yep.
And mindfulness
and addiction.
too.
yep, and mindfulness, absolutely.
Yeah.
We talked about how their brains are all wired differently. When I did a lot of mindfulness with them,
Mm-hmm.
they all now like understand when somebody's acting different than you do, it's because your brain
Right,
wires differently.
right.
So it makes sense.
And really, because you do a lot with that, your kids could then maybe come and teach, like, our kids.
About
Like,
me,
yeah, like, take us through one of the exercises that you take them through. Because I'm sure that would then make them feel good of, here's something I've learned, I can share out.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're not normally ones that are able to show what they know to other people.
Right.
So that could be a confidence booster for them.
Check
So,
it out.
so I'm really big on, so this is kind of like that silo busting between content areas, but also the silo busting between us as teachers kind of being in our rooms in isolation. So let's make a plan going forward so that we talk about this today and then we get back to grading papers and planning lessons and all of that, and then we forget about it. So what could we plan for? How would we want to do this? Because I know that you had mentioned maybe setting aside one day in the month to kind of plan, like, break it out, come up with
Well, if
ideas.
if we're gonna do two within a time frame, then we
Mhm.
could just meet
Mm-hmm.
once, starting, I guess, maybe next quarter since report cards
Mhm.
are coming out.
Yeah, and we'd be right into the last stuff.
Yeah, so planning it
November.
before and then starting it in quarter two. So like planning it within the next 2 weeks and then
Mhm.
starting it in November.
Because we've already done a huge amount of planning as far as getting ideas down of maybe
Right.
what we can
How
cover.
we can start it.
But then we can like divvy out
Mhm.
ELA teachers, we can
Yeah.
sit together, but ELA teachers can sit at one table and plan where are the videos, what can they research, and we can sit together and try to find science.
I was gonna say, like, we could introduce them, and then you guys could further,
Make the
there's,
connection.
like, make the connection
Right.
and do the math, it's like,
Right.
we could, like, show a video and have them do a reading, so then that way they're technically getting multiple
Multiple
sources, which is
Mhm.
one of our big standards, is using multiple
Yeah.
sources.
Mhm.
And then answering, like, maybe some multiple choice questions about the person, so then that way they're getting that practice, and then you guys could take it from there
Mhm.
and make the connection to science and
Mhm.
math.
I'm cool to know exactly what she did. I didn't watch the movie yet.
It's okay, it's
Like,
okay.
Exactly what she did mathematically to make the stuff at NASA happen so that we can have the kids do something similar.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know a lot of the science unit is the chemistry behind it,
Right.
but
I think she
It would be cool to
calculated
make it
like the
real launch.
launch times
Yeah,
and
she
like
did.
you have to launch
Trajectories and
like the
everything.
launch and trajectory, like if you launch at 11:30 on this day with the
You're
wind,
gonna land at
then
this
like
point.
you need to be at this trajectory,
Right.
and then when you come
Yeah.
back in, the rocket ship needs to be at this angle to come back in to be safe. So
it would be cool to like make a definitely more simplified version
Mhm.
of that, something for them to calculate.
So
And-
problem-based learning with that.
Yeah.
Definitely work.
Yeah. And it could also probably tie in somewhere with the ban agreement
Yeah.
later on. You can then say, remember what we talked about, and then put it in there.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of our first one, as the ELA teachers, do you want to set a time to get together to then figure out, okay, here's what we're gonna hit on with ELA? And then the three of us for math and science can then
Yeah.
work out.
Don't
I
we
got
have
you guys. I've
another,
already talked.
don't we have another
Yeah, for
PD
Johnson.
day
Mhm.
next
Yeah.
week?
Mhm, on
Let's
Friday.
just meet then.
Mhm.
Like I
You
said,
got it,
at some
okay.
point, it's either you have it or I have it.
How are we learning, that way people can still meet, people like to look at down
But this is how it works, is that, you know, we have something that we can pull from.
That we can build off of.
Yeah, and with everybody having different ideas, like I don't know if you've noticed, but a huge collaboration, because I am the first to admit, I don't always have the most creative ideas for every single thing, and I need to like talk it out with somebody. And I think that when you get into something this detailed with so many different parts coming into it, it's like you need a team to figure it out.
There's a book that's like powerful women in history, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
it has like a little like cartoon drawing of them.
I think
and
I have that
I
book.
have one as well.
Uh-huh. I also have a big box of cards of women in science that are like individual postcards, and I have the book that accompanies it. So even then, that we could use that in some way.
I like it. I say we meet when we're at SPD Day
Perfect.
next week, next Friday. In the morning, that way everyone can, oh.
I won't be here.